Right, let's talk about someone who's perhaps not comfortable to be where he is, Kobbie Mainoo. Manchester United shipped out a lot of players, obviously, in the window. Mainoo asked to leave, but didn't get his move. Rob, what do we know about how that played out for Kobbie Mainoo and why he's still there?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the culmination of, I don't know, the best part of 10 months, really, where he's just not really been playing for Man United. He's obviously had this meteoric rise under Erik ten Hag. He, caps it with United by scoring against City in the FA Cup final. Obviously, then goes to the Euros with England and plays well. And England reached final of the Euros. Since then, really, he's had this sort of big rise. It's been a little bit of a sort of rise and fall, really. He's not really played that much since Amorim came in November. I think he started 12 Premier League games under Amorim so far. Barely played towards the end of last season. Certainly wasn't involved in the Europa League knockout rounds that Amorim was obviously focusing on, and only played a minute of the Europa League final against Tottenham, which kind of shows you where he is, or where he was, in Amorim's thinking. It's reached a point where towards the end of the window, he's gone into Man United and asked United for a loan move. He's not one that's kind of prone to these big sort of outbursts and, stamping his feet. He's very, very calm on and off the pitch by all accounts, but has been kind of driven to ask for this loan move, mainly because he's worried about his chances of playing for England. He's obviously not playing regularly for Man United. He knows that he has to be playing regularly if he's going to get in and around Thomas Tuchel's England squad before the World Cup. He obviously wasn't named in the last England squad for these two World Cup qualifiers, which has set alarm bells ringing. And he's in a little bit of limbo now at the moment. Obviously, United said that they didn't want him to move on loan. He's stayed beyond the deadline. He's going to be there until at least January. I'd say he's now facing a little bit of limbo and worried, probably quite rightly, about whether he's actually going to make it to the World Cup next summer.
Yeah, and to add a bit of context on the England front, I mean, Thomas Tuchel was asked about him last week. I've got a quote here. He says he's lacking minutes. I don't think he's lacking anything else, which is about as pointed as it gets in terms of where he's at. He has the experience, the power, the quality, the talent to be on our list. He is on our list. But in his position, number 6, number 8, number 10, we have players in full rhythm and play key parts in their clubs. And it just, when you look at Elliot Anderson, I know that Kobbie Mainoo is not a number 6 really naturally, and certainly not against a decent team. But when you look at, that game against Andorra and you think, well, you're going to have 83% of the possession, I think England had in that game. Your number 6 isn't going to be required to do much defensively. Could he get the team playing? Could his range of passing, his vision, his intelligence in possession, his ability to drive with the ball, could that really be useful against a team like Andorra? And it's pretty clear that Tuchel at the moment isn't sure about what team he wants to pick for the World Cup next summer. He is assessing his options. He's pretty open about that, not only in terms of personnel, but also tactically. I mean, Mark, do you think, I know that for United as well, Ruben Amorim's made it quite clear that he's essentially fighting Bruno Fernandes for one spot in the team. I mean, do you think he should get in on merit for club or country?
Well, obviously if he's up against Bruno Fernandes, that's an impossible challenge, isn't it? Because Bruno Fernandes always plays, never gets injured, never gets suspended, and he is United's best player. So I thought that was a bit unfair by Amorim, because he can play in different positions. But I think we have to remember with Kobbie Mainoo as well, he's only 20. He's not 21 until April. So he did have a meteoric rise, and he was winning, major trophies at the age of 18. But, how many of the 20-year-olds right now playing for a so-called top 6 team? Phil Foden, we know, was held back a lot by Pep at Man City. 20 is very young. And I think we're maybe kind of judging Mainoo on the basis of what he did 2 years ago when he burst through. And obviously lots of younger players, they have a dip. They get to the point where, they need to be taken out of the side every now and again just to help their development. But, again, I think it's a little bit unfair on Mainoo to bracket him with Bruno Fernandes, because that is a no-win situation. But equally, the system that Ruben Amorim plays doesn't really lend itself to Kobbie Mainoo. He's almost like a square peg in a round hole at United. He does have ability, he has talent. Everything that Thomas Tuchel said is correct, but he doesn't really fit the system at Man United because, well, he does it while, he plays Casemiro in a two midfield. If Man United had Declan Rice, I'd happily see Declan Rice and Mainoo as the two in the forward and midfield. They don't have that, so he does have a lot of issues against him right now. But also, I think Kobbie Mainoo probably needs to be a little bit more patient. I understand the World Cup situation is weighing on his mind, but like I say, 20 years old, he's not going to be playing regular for a top side, because that just doesn't happen. It really doesn't.
I mean, there is a case with this, is that he's kind of victim to his own success a little bit, in that if he had taken a kind of normal route into Man United's first team, maybe he has a season where he plays, 10 games and then it's 20 games and then he kind of works his way up to being a regular and then he's a regular with England. I think the fact that he had such a meteoric rise and he gets into that team under Erik ten Hag, helps United win the FA Cup and then he goes to a major tournament straight away. When you're looking at the next major tournament, it's obviously going to be a massive disappointment to him if he's not involved in that. And there is a situation brewing with his contract as well that kind of comes back to this, in that he signed a new deal in 2023, I think, keeps him till 2027, with United having an option to keep him till 2028. But he went to Euro 2024, and because he had this big rise, he had this huge increase in status. United kind of agreed then to look at his contract again and say, well, we'll talk to you about a wage increase. It's going to reflect your new position with England and with Man United. Well, in amongst all this, United have had a change of ownership and they're obviously keeping a very, very close eye on wages, and whatever step up in wages he thought he was due to kind of put him on a par with some of those England players hasn't happened. And you've got this uncertainty around his kind of future under Amorim. Does he fit into 3-4-3? Does Amorim even like him particularly in any of those roles that he's tried? This has all been played out against a situation where his contract is a little bit uncertain. He thought that he would probably be tied down to new terms by now. He hasn't. And even though United aren't really panicked in terms of how long he's got left on his deal, because he's still got 2 years, maybe even 3 years left on his contract, all of this kind of things, all this stuff is playing into more and more uncertainty, to the point where he is worried about his United future, which, if you look back to that FA Cup final in 2024, he played such a key role, obviously scored the winning goal. He's a huge part of these kind of post-match celebrations. Everyone will see the pictures of him with the bucket hats. These bucket hats have since gone viral, and you see sort of United fans in the stands still wearing these United bucket hats because of him and him wearing one. It was unthinkable, really, at that time that United, not even a year down the line, could be thinking about letting him go, or even Mainoo possibly wanting to leave himself. And it reached the point on deadline day, I was told, that there was a loan move to Napoli, pretty much agreed with Mainoo representatives and Napoli, and it was ready to go at the drop of a hat, really, that if United had agreed, he could have gone there quite quickly. It's obviously United who ended up blocking that decision. I just think that if things don't change for Kobbie Mainoo in the next 3 or 4 months when we get to the January window, all of these stories, all of these rumours, all of this kind of noise around him is only increased even further. And you could have a situation where he leaves United in January, if only to pursue his aim of making that World Cup squad.
Rob, can we just throw back to that famous picture that they had when they scored a goal at United? It was Garnacho, it was Højlund, it was Kobbie Mainoo, and it was billed as the future of Man United, these young kids that are going to take the club forward, the new class of United, so all this stuff. But clearly they were all young at the time. They all had a great kind of burst of form and it all dropped off. Did we kind of overhype? Well, we know we overhyped Garnacho, but did we overhype Mainoo a little bit? Is he a victim of his success in that sense, that we're guilty of it as much as anybody else? And even the fans that are so desperate to see a homegrown player do well, did we just kind of go a bit too far and get a bit too carried away with him a little bit? Yeah,
possibly. And that's, you're right. That's what kind of happens with these young, especially young English players, that they kind of hit a level and we all decide that they're going to be the next greatest thing. So there is an element of that. And, you were right in what you said at the start, that you have to remember his age, that he's not 25, 26. He's 20 years old and probably needs to be allowed the time to develop. I mean, I think it's hard for us in the media where you see someone break through in the manner that he did and play such a key role in all of these successes, whether it's the FA Cup final or Euro 2024, and then still sort of say, we need to pump the brakes a little bit. And I actually think with that, in regards to that one particular picture with Garnacho, Mainoo and Højlund, United are guilty of hyping that up as much as anyone else, because they recreated that picture at the Cliff, I think, to launch a new tracksuit or a new kit with the three of them sat on a wall, kind of recreating that picture that they put together at Old Trafford. So, if United didn't want the kind of hype around these three young players, then they shouldn't have kind of put them in the front and center of that advertising campaign. And I think the fact that there's doubts over Mainoo's future. Højlund has already gone on loan to Napoli. Garnacho has gone permanently to Chelsea. Just shows that there is a little bit of lack of direction still at Man United. A little bit that at that time United were looking at those three players and thinking, well, whatever else is going on, we've got these three great young players who we can possibly build our next great team around. Well, again, 6 months down the line, Mainoo is still there, but barely, and the other two have gone. So, you're probably right. Do we hype up young players and build them up a little bit too quickly? Possibly. But again, I would suggest that United have been as guilty as that as others as well.
And just finally on this, 87 years, it's quite a remarkable thing, I think, that every matchday squad for Manchester United has had an academy graduate in it. Obviously, with Rashford going, with Garnacho going, Kobbie Mainoo out of favour, that record is in jeopardy. Do you think it matters, Mark?
Well, it matters for the fabric of the club and the tradition of the club, but I think overall it doesn't really matter. Let's be honest. I think if you're putting kids on the bench just to kind of keep a record going, if they're not good enough, then it's to the detriment of the team. And this isn't on Ruben Amorim. This is on the kind of the roots of the club. Are they deep enough? Are they good enough? And if Ruben Amorim is the coach that sees that record break, then I think you point the finger at the people that have been looking after the academy over the years. I mean, I know there's a bit of a fuss made of Nick Cox leaving to go to Everton at the start of the season as the academy director, and it was deemed as a huge blow to Man United, prospects. Well, let's be honest, there wasn't a single Man United player in the under-21 tournament this summer, none in the England squad. I mean, if you look at the younger levels of the England teams right now, there are very, very few Man United players, and that's because the academy isn't developing enough players. So if Ruben Amorim wants to keep this run going, he's going to say to the guys that are running the academy, say, well, hang on a minute, where are these players? So yes, it's a proud record, but it has been padded over recent years by the fact that there are so many substitutes eligible to be on the bench on a match day these days. It's not like in the 70s and 80s where you had one sub, and in the early years of the Premier League where you had two. That was a real achievement back in those days. You had, obviously the class of 92 gigs, etc. So now it's kind of easy to put these players on the bench, but I don't think they should be there if they're not good enough. So if it ends, it ends. It's still an incredible record, but it can't go on forever. And I think the fact that it will probably end this season is because United haven't been good enough away from the pitch. So don't pin that one on Ruben Amorim if it happens.
I've got 2 words for you. Football heritage. That's what that record is to me. And I do think it should. I think they should do everything they can to keep it going. And also, you don't want to be the manager who lets that go. I think it becomes another stick that you're beaten with. It looks as though not only are you sort of turning your back on the traditions of the club, but every club wants to bring through young players and try and develop them. And if you're the one that ends that record, when, as you say, it is fairly easy to keep it going, then it almost feels more pointed than just padding it and marking time, if you like. Rob, you got the deciding vote on this. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I do feel sorry for Amorim because he said a couple of times in press conferences to us, kind of not directly, but hinted that he feels like the academy system at United is not good enough and it needs improving. He said it in a kind of wider point, as in everything at the club needs improving, but he has said it. And also that he could turn around and say, well, because of PSR rules, United have let the likes of Dean Henderson, Anthony Elanga, Alvaro Fernandez, all of these players go. Scott McTominay is another one who could possibly be in and around the first team squad now, and he would have more options. The issue for him is I went back and looked at the 4,000th game United put on this kind of media day to celebrate the 4,000th game in a row that they had an academy player in the squad. And at the time you had Rashford, Jesse Lingard, you had Mason Greenwood, Brandon Williams, Axel Tuanzebe, all of those players. I think there was about 7 on the bench. Or in the squad, sorry. For the last game against Burnley before the international break, it was only Mainoo. So there has been a lack of options. I'm with you, James. I just think that Amorim may feel that if he is the manager who breaks that record, that it becomes another stick to beat him with. I mean, it's a little bit, it goes against the grain a little bit to think that he may sit in a room picking a matchday squad and think, well, actually, maybe I just need to pick someone from the academy who I know is not going to play, but just to stick him on the bench because I don't want to be the guy that lets this record go. I mean, I imagine in his head he's thinking, well, I want all of my players, all of the substitutes, I want to think that all of those could come on and make an impact. And if there is a player who's better than an academy player, then he deserves a spot. I mean, if I was Amorim, I wouldn't want to be the manager who let that record go. I can understand Mark's point of view that you pick a squad for the best set of players to win a match, and Amorim isn't in the position to kind of throw away positions in the matchday squad. But if I was Amorim, I wouldn't want to be the guy that let that record go.
But maybe it's the jolt that United need. If it does end, if it ends, it'll be like a kick in the teeth, and it'll be a reminder that nostalgia is just a pointless exercise. Because, when United were winning trophy after trophy in the Sir Alex Ferguson during the early years of the Premier League and beyond, yes, they had the class of 92, but this record wasn't a thing. It wasn't an element that people pointed to. It's only because it's become a big thing the last 10, 15 years, largely because United haven't won anything tangible. And it's the one thing that the fans can cling on to is that, yeah, we're not winning anything, but at least we have a kid on the bench that's come through the ranks. If that ends, maybe it'll kind of shake things up a little bit and make people at the club realise they have to do better producing better players. So if it ends, it ends.